Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for being here. It's good to be back at the White House after our trip to the G20. I don't have any announcements to make at the top, so I will start with your questions. Eric.
On the IAEA report, should we anticipate any change in U.S. policy or posture toward Iran based on those findings?
I don't want to get ahead of a report that hasn't come out yet. What I can tell you is that we certainly expect it to echo and reinforce what we've been saying about Iran's behavior and its failure to live up to its international obligations. And it will, I'm sure, echo our concern about Iran's nuclear program. But what I can also say is that because of the leadership of this president, we have mobilized the international community in a way that has never existed before to take action to pressure Iran, to isolate Iran. We now have in place the most aggressive, isolating, and debilitating sanctions regime ever. And that regime has had an impact, as the Iranian president himself recently noted. We continue to focus on a diplomatic channel, and it is because of the kind of consensus that we've achieved at the international level among our partners and allies in dealing with Iran that we were able to continue to isolate and put pressure on Iran and to insist that Iran get right with the world and live up to its international obligations.
Is there any possibility the U.S. would conduct a military strike on Iran's nuclear facilities?
We are focused, as I just said, on diplomacy. We, of course, never remove from the table any option in a situation like this, but we are very focused on diplomacy, and we certainly think that that is appropriate, and that our approach here has had the kind of effect, the positive effect, in terms of pressuring and isolating Iran that I just noted.
And how would the U.S. view military action by Israel?
Again, I would simply reiterate that we are focused on working with our international partners and allies on isolating Iran, pressuring Iran, pushing it to live up to its international obligations with regards to its nuclear program. That approach has had an effect, and it is certainly, we are certainly now in a situation that did not exist before, where because of the dual-track approach that this president took and this administration took, it is now clear to the world that the United States is not the issue here. It is Iran. It is Iranian behavior. And that has allowed us to mobilize the international community in a way that hasn't existed in the past, and to come together putting pressure on Iran to change its behavior. Yes?
Jay, what's the White House's reaction to the change of government in Greece and the latest turmoil in European markets today?
Well, as you know, I'm not going to comment on the ups and downs of financial markets. We welcome the consensus that has been reached in Greece over the need to implement the country's reform commitments to the IMF and the European Union, and we urge the government to move as quickly as possible to fulfill the commitments required under its new rescue program. So, broadly speaking, moving back in terms of the G20 and the positive progress made there, of which the aspect of the agreement with regard to Greece is a part. We continue to call on Europe and work with our European counterparts to implement those decisions rapidly and to reach a conclusive endpoint in terms of dealing with this problem.
Following up on Erica's question, once the IAEA report comes out, do you anticipate pushing for more sanctions? And if so,
I don't want to get ahead of a report that is not out yet and nobody's seen. I would simply say that we expect it to echo the concerns that we've long held about Iranian behavior, and in terms of specific reaction to that report when it comes out, I think I'll wait until it comes out.
Do you have any reaction to the new allegations against Republican presidential candidate Herman Cain?
I do not, no. Let me move in the back here. Cheryl.
Does the White House have any reaction to the State Department IG's decision to investigate the Keystone pipeline?
I would refer you to the State Department on that. This is obviously a process that, through executive order and longstanding precedent, is run out of state. It is a process that includes input from a variety of agencies and departments within the administration. It is not done in a vacuum, but on that specific question, I would refer you to the State Department. Yes, Brianna.
Jay, voters are set in Mississippi to vote tomorrow on adding a so-called personhood amendment to the state constitution that would say legally life begins at conception. Does the president have a response to this, a thought on this?
Well, I haven't spoken to him about it. You know his position on choice and women's reproductive rights, but I haven't heard. I don't have a specific response to this referendum.
Are you concerned about this? And I mean, it seems to be launching this issue, obviously, to a much higher platform, especially depending on the outcome tomorrow. Concerns?
Well, why don't we wait and see? But I don't have a specific response to this this matter. Yeah. Let me go. Yes, all the way back.
Thank you, Jay. Quick question on President Obama's visit to Asia. We know he kind of pushed hard on TPP during the APEC summit, and also he might announce more U.S. troop presence in Australia. So, what is this part of his returning Asia policy, and what's his goal at the APEC summit?
Well, I'm not going to get ahead of the president or even our preview of that trip today, but I will say that broadly, the focus on the Asia-Pacific region reflects this president's commitment to this country's economic future. The whole rebalancing that we've talked about is very important, and the APEC summit, as well as the East Asia summit, and the other elements of this trip reinforce this president's commitment to the kind of rebalancing and refocus that he has long believed is necessary. And it goes right on the economic front to his goal, rather, to double our exports and increase our trade, specifically with the countries in the Asia-Pacific region. So, broadly speaking, our goals for the trip have everything to do with that economic part of our relationship with the region, although there are many other elements as well. Eleanor.
Jay, President Clinton has a book out called Putting Americans to Work, Back to Work.
Mm-hmm.
How do you view his role in trying to break the impasse on Capitol Hill? Does he have a role?
Well, I would say that the book is very helpful in that it reinforces the positive steps that President Obama has taken and the positive steps he is now trying to take with Congress and is taking independently through his executive authority. We welcome President Clinton's adding his voice to this, as he already has, because he certainly has a lot of experience in a situation like this, where we need to focus with great intensity on the number one priority that the American people have, which is the need to grow the economy and create jobs. I think there was a poll recently, there have been a lot lately, but in the last couple of days, that asked American people what their number one concern was, what their priority was, and I believe it was over 50% said the economy and jobs. Not another issue even got into double digits, which then makes you wonder why some in Congress are not focused on that priority, but are focused on other issues that are of much lower priority to the American people. So this president is pushing very hard, as you know, for Congress to pass the provisions of the American Jobs Act. Since this Republicans in the Senate have blocked the Jobs Act as a whole, and now some of the provisions of it, he will force this issue every week, working with Democrats in Congress, and he hopes that Republicans will hear the voices of their constituents and understand that they need to respond to this urgent demand for action. There's great frustration in the country with the dysfunctionality that has been demonstrated in Congress lately, with its refusal to take very simple, bipartisan, mainstream decisions that would have a positive impact on economic growth and job creation. So we welcome every prominent voice who joins in the effort to call on Congress to do its job.
Well, he faced a similar impasse, but not as difficult. Has he passed along any advice?
Well, I don't have any specific conversation to read out to you, but certainly there are a number of people in this White House, beginning with the president, who have conversations with President Clinton, and communication goes both ways and is very positive and helpful, I think. So again, we welcome his efforts on behalf of the American people in terms of pressing Washington to act, Congress specifically to act, to grow the economy and create jobs. Let me get back. Yes, sorry, you are.
Devin Dwyer with ABC.
Welcome,
Jay,
Devin.
thanks. Thank
Sure.
you. On Keystone, real quick. Last week you said the State Department was going to, be the final arbiter of this. Then we heard the president on the Nebraska local television affiliate suggest that he could be involved. Can you clarify? Is he the final arbiter of that, and when might he rule on that?
Sure. Well, let me. I think I took this question last week, but this process, as we have said all along, resides, is housed within the State Department, both as decided by or called upon by an executive order that predates this administration and by tradition that long predates that. The process is an open one in the sense that while State Department runs it, it is required to take in input from a variety of agencies in the executive branch, and it is absolutely going to take into account the criteria that the President laid out in that interview that you referenced with a television station in Omaha. And that includes both the jobs impact, economic impact, public health impact, environmental impact. All these criteria are very important to this process. In the end, we fully expect that the decision or the resolution of this issue, the determination, will reflect the President's views. It's his administration. It is the Obama administration. The State Department is very much a part of the Obama administration.
How will he make his views known in the process?
Well, I don't want to get ahead of the process at all, but you can be sure that the determination will reflect his views. Back and forth. Come on, somebody. Yes.
Thank you. What's the purpose of the meeting today with Secretary General of NATO? And another question on Syria. Do you have any reaction on the Syrians accusing the U.S. accusing the U.S. of interference in their affairs with the State Department, called for rejection to the amnesty?
Well, let me start with Syria. I don't have anything specific on that. Maybe State Department does. Our position on Syria and the Assad regime is clear, and it has not changed. So I'm sure they take issue with it. We believe that he has lost his legitimacy to rule, and that the appalling violence that has been perpetrated on the Syrian people has to stop. I'm sorry, what was your first question? I got so.
On Rasmussen?
Oh well, the president meets with the head of NATO on a relatively regular basis, and I think this is just a part of that. Obviously, NATO just completed a very important mission in Libya that we believe was executed very effectively. Demonstrates the way that we can work collectively with NATO, with the United Nations, and in the case of Libya, with other states, including those in the region, to bring about a positive result. And I'm sure they'll be talking about that as well. Yes, Nora.
The President has vowed to stop Iran from having a nuclear weapon, and yet the IAEA report scheduled out this week says that Iran has the sufficient information to design and produce a workable implosion nuclear device that has all the critical steps necessary. So what's the President going to do?
I think I got this question before. I'm not going to anticipate a report that hasn't come out yet. I do believe it will echo our concern about Iran's behavior. I think that it's obvious to every one of us who have observed Iran over the past number of years that because of this president's leadership, we have created a situation where there is a high level of consensus in the international community about Iranian behavior. It is clear now to the world that Iran is the problem. It is not the United States. It is not the international community. And that consensus has allowed us to act to implement the most aggressive, isolating, destabilizing sanctions in history. Those sanctions have had an effect, and our overall effort to isolate and pressure Iran has an effect. We will continue to push the diplomatic course here and to make clear to Iran that it needs to choose to uphold its obligations to the international community with regards to its nuclear program.
I understand about there have been a number of aggressive actions taken and increased sanctions, and yet the report suggests that Iran has moved even closer to building a nuclear weapon. So how is it that these sanctions have been